Zebra by Chaim Potok. He couldn't remember when he began to be called by that name. Perhaps they started to call him Zebra when he first began running. Or maybe he began running when they started to call him Zebra. He loved the name, and he loved to run. When he was very young, his parents took him to a zoo, where he saw zebras for the first time. They were odd-looking creatures, like stubby horses, short-legged, thick-necked, with dark and white stripes. Then one day he went with his parents to a movie about Africa, and he saw zebras, hundreds of them, thundering across a grassy plain, dust rising in boiling brown clouds. Was he already running before he saw that movie, or did he begin to run afterward? No one seemed able to remember. He would go running through the neighborhood for the sheer joy of feeling the wind on his face. People said that when he arched his head up and back and his face kind of flattened out. One of his teachers told him it was clever to run that way. His balance was better. But the truth was that he ran that way, his head thrown back, because he loved to feel the wind rushing across his neck. Each time, after only a few minutes of running, his legs would begin to feel wondrously light. He would run past the school and the homes on the street beyond the church. All the neighbors knew him and would wave and call out, "Go Zebra!" And sometimes one or two of their dogs would run with him, a while barking. He would imagine himself a zebra on the African plain, running. There was a hill on Franklin Avenue, a steep hill. By the time he reached that hill, he would feel his legs so light as if he had no legs at all and was flying. He would begin to descend the hill, certain as he ran that he needed only to give himself the slightest push off, and off he would go. And instead of a zebra, he would become the bird he had once seen in a movie about Alaska. He would swiftly change into an eagle, soaring higher and higher, as light and the gentlest breeze, the cool wind caressing his arms and legs and neck. Then, a year ago, racing down Franklin Avenue, he had given himself that push, and had begun to turn into an eagle, when a huge rushing shadow appeared in his line of vision, and crashed into him, and plunged him into a darkness from which he emerged very, very slowly. "Never, never, never run down that hill so fast that you can't stop at the corner," his mother had warned him again and again. His schoolmates and friends kept calling him Zebra, even after they all knew that the doctors had told him he would never be able to run like that again. His leg would heal in time, the doctors said, and perhaps in a year or so the brace would come off. But they were not at all certain about his hand. From time to time, his injured hand, which he still wore in a sling, would begin to hurt. The doctor said they could find no cause for the pain. One morning, during Mr. Morgan's geography class, Zebra's hand began to hurt badly. He sat staring off at the window at the sky. Mr. Morgan, a stiff-mannered person in his early 50s, given to smart suits and dapper bow ties, called on him to respond to a question. Zebra stumbled about in vain for the answer. Mr. Morgan told him to pay attention to the geography inside the classroom and not to the geography outside. "In this class, young man, you will concentrate your attention upon the earth, not upon the sky," Mr. Morgan said. Later, in the schoolyard during the mid-morning recess, Zebra stood near the tall fence, looking out at the street and listening to the noises behind him. His schoolmates were racing about, playing exuberantly, shouting and laughing with full voices. Their joyous sounds went ringing through the quiet street. Most times, Zebra would stand alongside the basketball court or behind the wire screen at home plate and watch the games. That day, because his hand hurt so badly, he stood alone behind the chain-link fence of the schoolyard. That's how he happened to see the man, and that's how the man happened to see him. One minute the side street on which the school stood was strangely empty, without people or traffic, without even any of the dogs that often roamed about the neighborhood, vacant and silent, as if they were already in the full heat of summer. The red brick ranch house that belonged to Mr. Morgan, and the white clapboard two-story house in which Mrs. English lived, and the other homes on the street with their columned front porches and their back patios and the tall oaks, all stood curiously still in the warm golden light of the mid-morning sun. Then a man emerged from wide and busy Franklin Avenue at the far end of the street. Zebra saw the man stop at the corner and stand looking at a public trash can. He watched as the man poked his hand into the can and fished about, but seeming to find nothing he wanted. He withdrew the hand and, raising it to shield his eyes from the sunlight, glanced at the street sign on the lamp-post. He started to walk up the street in the direction of the school. He was tall and wiry and looked to be about 40 years old. In his right hand he carried a bulging brown plastic bag. He wore a khaki army jacket, a blue denim shirt, blue jeans, and brown cowboy boots. His gaunt face and muscular neck were reddened by exposure to the sun. Long brown hair spilled out below his dark blue farmer's cap. On the front of the cap, in large orange letters, were the words Land Rover. He walked with his eyes on the sidewalk and the curb, as if looking for something, and he went right past Zebra without noticing him. Zebra's hand hurt very much. He was about to turn away when he saw the man stop and look around and peer up at the red wall of the school. The man sat down in the bag and took off his cap and stuffed it into a pocket of his jacket. From one of his jean pockets he removed a handkerchief, with which he then wiped his face. He shoved the handkerchief back into the pocket and put the cap back on his head. Then he turned and saw Zebra. He picked up the bag and started down the street where Zebra was standing. When the man was about 10 feet away, Zebra noticed that the left sleeve of his jacket was empty. The man came up to Zebra and said in a low, friendly, shy voice, "Hello." Zebra answered with a cautious "Hello," trying not to look at the empty sleeve, which had been tucked into the man's jacket pocket. The man said with a distinct southern accent, "What's your name, son?" Zebra said, "Adam." "What kind of school is this here, Adam?" "It's a good school," Zebra answered. "How long before you all begin your summer vacation?" 3 days, Zebra said. "Anything special happen here during the summer?" "During the summer? Nothing goes on here. There are no classes." "Well, what do you all do during the summer?" "Some of us go to camp. Some of us hang around. We find things to do." Zebra's hand had begun to tingle and throb. Why was this man asking all these questions? Zebra thought maybe he shouldn't be talking to him at all. He seemed vaguely menacing in that army jacket, the dark blue cap with the words Land Rover on it in orange letters, and the empty sleeve. Yet there was a kindness in his gray eyes and ruddy features. The man gazed past Zebra at the students playing in the yard. "Adam, do you think your school would be interested in having someone teach an art class during the summer?" That took Zebra by surprise. An art class? Drawing, sculpting, things like that. Zebra was trying very hard not to look at the man's empty sleeve. "I don't know." "Where's the school office, Adam?" "On Washington Avenue. Go to the end of the street and turn right." "Thanks," the man said. He hesitated a moment. Then he asked in a quiet voice, "What happened to you, Adam?" "A car hit me," Zebra said. "It was my fault." The man seemed to wince. For a flash of a second, Zebra thought to ask the man what had happened to him. The words were on his tongue, but he kept himself from saying anything. The man started back up the street, carrying the brown plastic bag. Zebra suddenly called, "Hey, mister!" The man stopped and turned. "My name is John Wilson," he said softly. "Mr. Wilson, when you go into the school office, you'll see signs on 2 doors. One says Dr. Winter, and the other says Mrs. English. Ask for Mrs. English." Dr. Winter, the principal, was a disciplinarian and a grump. Mrs. English, the assistant principal, was generous and kind. Dr. Winter would probably tell the man to call his secretary for an appointment. Mrs. English might invite him into her office and offer him a cup of coffee and listen to what he had. The man hesitated, looking at Zebra. "Appreciate the advice," he said. Zebra watched him walk to the corner. Under the lamp-post was a trash can. Zebra saw the man set down the plastic bag and stick his hand into the can and haul out a battered umbrella. The man tried to open the umbrella, but its metal ribs were broken. The black fabric dangled flat and limp from the pole. He put the umbrella into the plastic bag and headed for the entrance of the school. A moment later, Zebra heard the whistle that signaled the end of recess. He followed his classmates at a distance, careful to avoid anyone's bumping against his hand. He sat through his algebra class, copying the problems on the blackboard, while holding down his notebook with his left elbow. The sling chafed his neck and felt warm and clumsy on his bare arm. There were sharp pains now in the two curled fingers of his hand. Right after the class, he went downstairs to the office of Mrs. Walsh, a cheerful, gray-haired woman in a white nurse's uniform. She said, "I'm sorry I can't do very much for you, Adam, except give you 2 Tylenols. He swallowed the Tylenols down with water. On his way back up to the second floor, he saw the man with the dark blue cap emerge from the school office with Mrs. English. He stopped on the stairs and watched as the man and Mrs. English stood talking together. Mrs. English nodded and smiled and shook the man's hand. The man walked down the corridor, carrying the plastic bag, and left the school building. Zebra went slowly to his next class. The class was taught by Mrs. English, who came hurrying into the room some minutes after the bell had rung. "I apologize for being late," she said, sounding a little out of breath. "There was an important matter I had to attend to." Mrs. English was a tall, gracious woman in her 40s. It was common knowledge that early in her life she had been a journalist on a Chicago newspaper and had written short stories, which she could not get published. Soon after her marriage to a doctor, she had become a teacher. This was the only class Miss English taught. 10 students from the upper school, 7th and 8th grades, were chosen every year for the class. They met for an hour 3 times and told one another stories. Each story would be discussed and analyzed by Mrs. English and the class. Mrs. English called it a class in the imagination. Zebra was grateful he did not have to take notes in this class. He had only to listen to stories. That day, Andrea, the freckle-faced, red-headed girl with very thick glasses who sat next to Zebra, told about a woman scientist who discovered a method of healing trees that had been blasted apart by lightning. Mark, who had something wrong with his upper lip, told in his quavery voice about a selfish space cadet who stepped into time machine and met his future self, who turned out to be a hateful person, and how the cadet then returned to the present and changed himself. Kevin talked in blurred, high-pitched tones and often related parts of his story with his hands. Mrs. English would quietly repeat many of his sentences. Today he told about an explorer who set out on a journey through a valley filled with yellow stones and surrounded by red mountains, where he encountered an army of green shadows that had been at war for hundreds of years with an army of purple shadows. The explorer showed them how to make peace. When it was Zebra's turn, he told a story about a bird that one day crashed against a closed window pane and broke a wing. A boy tried to heal the wing but couldn't. The bird died, and the boy buried it under a tree in his lawn. When he had finished, there was silence. Everyone in the class was looking at him. "You always tell such sad stories," Andrea said. The bell rang. Mrs. English dismissed the class. In the hallway, Andrea said to Zebra, "You know, you are a very gloomy life form." "Andrea, get off my case," Zebra said. He went out to the schoolyard for the mid-afternoon recess. On the other side of the chain-link fence was the man in the dark blue cap. Zebra went over to him. "Hello again, Adam," the man said. "I've been waiting for you." "Hello," said Zebra. "Thanks much for suggesting I talk to Mrs. English." "You're welcome." "Adam, are you at all interested in art?" "No." "Ever try your hand at it?" "I've made drawings for class. I don't like it." "Well, just in case you change your mind, I'm giving an art class in your school during the summer." "I'm going to camp in August," Zebra said. "There's that big long month of July." "I don't think so," Zebra said. "Okay, suit yourself. I'd like to give you something, a little thank you gift." He reached into an inside pocket and drew out a small pad and a pen. He placed the pad against the fence. "Adam, you want to help me out a little bit here? Put your fingers through the fence and grab hold of the pad." Extending the fingers of his right hand, Zebra held the pad to the fence and watched as the man began to work with the pen. He felt the pad move slightly. "I need you to hold it real still," the man said. He was standing bent over, very close to Zebra. The words Land Rover on his cap shone in the afternoon sunlight. As he worked, he glanced often at Zebra. His tongue kept pushing up against the sides of his cheeks. making tiny hills rise and fall on his face. Wrinkles formed intricate spidery webs in the skin below his gray eyes. On his smooth forehead and the blue and purple shadows beneath